more and more, we are learning that the way to win in business is through collaboration, through treating people with dignity and respect. So the access to getting to be extraordinary as a team is if we were to call out a small set of practices that could define how we could work together.
I think it's so important the way it's framed as a practice, and it's a lifelong journey.
And we could get really good at it. And if we were skillful in calling out those practices, that would be the pathway to being extraordinary.
Lloyd, welcome to the show. Great to have you here.
It's a delight. Delight to be with you, Brad.
So for those who haven't encountered your work yet, perhaps you could share a little bit about who you are and what you do.
I work with businesses and what primarily, and what we offer is called the collaborative way. And the collaborative way is a way of working and relating to one another in a company. So it's based around the perspective that when we come to work, we all have different backgrounds, our childhood, or the companies we've worked in, the schools we've gone to, etc. From that, we all come with different expectations about how we should be working together. And the problem is that leads us to failed expectations. We bump into each other. The other people aren't behaving correctly. It's really hard to be an extraordinary team in those kind of circumstances. Every once in a while you get there, usually because somebody's leader's charismatic enough to pull the whole group together, and you get beyond that. So I was working with a company that was looking way back in 89 actually, in 89, 90, that was the world leader in providing the consumables, the polished silicon wafers, to make computer chips. And there was this breakthrough that had happened in making computer chips back then called planarizations, where they're now able to put layers of printed circuits on one computer chip. So this is one of the key breakthroughs that allows us to be doing what we're doing right now and have our smartphones and all the world of technology that we're in. And the founders of this company, the owners, were wise enough to recognize, wow, their market was going to explode. And when it did, really big companies like 3M and other companies like that were going to come into their market. And when they did, they'll have more PhDs to throw at it, more resources to throw at it, more money than Rodale had. And
hey there, if you'd like to support this show and help us continue producing this kind of content, please visit startwithvalues.com. There's a link in the show notes, and pre-order my forthcoming book. It's packed full of tools, insights, techniques to help you live a values-aligned life, to reduce stress, increase fulfillment, and it makes a great gift. So perhaps it's something you could share with someone else who you care about. That would mean the absolute world to me. Thank you again, and all the best. Let's get back to the episode.
So their question that they were in was, well, how can we continue to compete and be the world leader in these consumables? And they came to the conclusion there was only one way to do that, and is if they could come up with an extraordinary way of working together. Because they weren't a garage shop anymore. They were pretty big. They were international, but they were they could see they could really use a whole nother notch up to be extraordinary. And we had done some work together. I'd helped them merge two of their companies back together, and through that got to know each other. And they approached me with this challenge that they were facing, and asked me if I would join them in helping them develop this extraordinary way of working together. So I took that. I mean, that was a dream come true kind of assignment. So, yeah, I'm willing. And then as we started off, we did it like most consultants would do. As training the leaders in leadership and commitment and the changing behaviors and all that kind of stuff. And we're making progress. But when I looked at it honestly, I had to say to myself, I don't think we're going at the rate of change that we need to in order to meet the challenge that is coming our way. And so what do we do? And it was in that question that it hit me that if you wanted to be extraordinary as a company, as a group of people working together, it's not enough that the individuals are extraordinary. And we see that like with sports teams. You can have an extraordinary group of people, but they don't show up as an extraordinary team at times. So the access to getting to be extraordinary as a team is if we were to call out a small set of practices that could define how we could work together. Because if we could do that, then we could take on learning how to work together in that way. And we could get really good at it. And if we were skillful in calling out those practices, that would be the pathway to being extraordinary. And then when I asked the next question, well, what might those practices be? It was just so obvious from all my years of work. The first one is that we listen generously to each other. Because if we can learn as a group, as a company, to actually really listen for the value in what each person has to say and get really good at that, that's going to be incredible. And then the next one was to speak straight to each other. And by that, we mean to speak honestly and in a way that contributes to what we're up to together, where we really take responsibility for the impact that our speaking has. And so it's speaking straight with a lot of responsibility. So let's learn, if we could do that, man, again, that would be incredible, right? And then the third commitment is that we will be for each other. So we're going to learn how to actually be better at supporting each other's success and working out issues that we have, so we get good at cleaning up misunderstandings and breakdowns that happen between the two or more of us. So you do that. Again, that's where so many companies go right. If you get inside them, you realize, man, we got little misunderstandings and wars from years ago going on right now. No wonder we can't make a decision. And we wonder why it's so hard to make the decision is because we got issues between each other. And that's what we're really talking about. We're not talking about what we think we're talking about. So, wow, you get that to happen. And then the fourth one is honor our commitments. So one of the things that I've seen over the years, everybody thinks they know what commitments are, but we really don't have common mutual understanding about what a commitment is. And if we can all have this, agree upon how we look at a commitment and how we relate to commitments, and then get really good at supporting each other in our commitments and recognize that when we give a commitment to somebody or receive a commitment, that's a relational phenomenon. We're in it together. It's not just, oh, you made the commitment. Great. It's on you. Let's see what you do. Which so often is the way it goes, And so we get good at honoring our commitments and working together from supporting each other. And then the last one is what we often call this secret sauce is acknowledgement and appreciation. So that we really get good at skillfully acknowledging and appreciating each other with some depth to it. And that we, when you work in an environment where you feel really appreciated, it's hard not to give your all. So those are the 5 practices, and they're all focused toward and trued up by our commitment to forward whatever we're up to together. So we're not just listening generously for the sake of listening generously. We're listening generously so as to move forward, accomplish our mission, our vision, our objectives. And so we're learning to bring these practices and true them up in a way that results in us being an extraordinary team. And through all and we do that in a context, a framework of learning. So we're all learners. None of us are ever going to master this way of learning, of relating. I've I've been at it for a long time, and I haven't mastered it. I'm still a learner and learning regularly. But what I've also been taught by my clients through the years is that if you get a group of people together and they take on a commitment to work this way, and with whatever level of understanding they have for each of these practices, if they begin to deliberately practice working in this way, they're now able to accomplish things that they weren't able to accomplish before. So that's what we're doing, and it's not only does it then produce, I mean, just amazing difference in what a company is able to accomplish. Those practices spill out into people's personal life as well, and families are contributed to, and churches and all like that. So it's a so I've been, like at it since 1990. I'm a very fortunate person. So.
Amazing. It makes so much sense when you outline those practices, and yet most workplaces have no clue. They just throw people together and then try and add band-aid solutions. Like, we need a better culture, so let's offer gym memberships and this and that. And that's not actually what people want or need. It's people want to enjoy their working experience. It shouldn't have to be difficult, but having a framework for collaboration and how we behave together makes so much sense. And sports teams do this pretty well. Any elite sports team, they have their framework. This is how we work together, and this is why we're doing what we're doing. And that's a missing ingredient. So how did the book come about?
The Collaborative Way, a story about engaging the mind and spirit of a company. Well, I've been asked for years and years and years to write a book. And I just was like, I'm not really wanting to do that. And then I worked with my son on our website and some other things that we worked on together. And I saw that, hey, there's this opening in his life and my life where we could, write a book together. And if he was interested. And so I asked him if he was interested, and he said, yeah, he would be interested. And then I said, well, we got our choice. We could either make it a book that was like a story, or we could make it more like a textbook or like that. He said story. He was an extraordinary creative writer. So we took it on together, and it's turned out to be a very successful book. It's with no advertising, and only in recent years, even on Amazon, it's gone just about all over the world. I don't know of anyone in Russia buying it, but just about China, everywhere else, Africa, Europe, all over the place. And you see companies that are even practicing. I recently ran into a wonderful yoga studio that has been practicing the collaborative way for 14 years just from the book. And now we've started doing some work together, and it's very wonderful to bring a new depth. But again, at any level of understanding and at whatever level you're practicing the collaborative way, it's going to make a difference if you're deliberately practicing and are willing to learn.
I think it's so important the way it's framed as a practice, and it's a lifelong journey. It's not a one-off workshop. It's kind of, you can learn from the workshop experiences, of course, but the practice is often a missing ingredient in the workplace, because it's kind of like, just get things done. Here's the KPIs, go, 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 go. And it's at any expense. Something I was talking about recently was, we need to care not just about what we achieve, but how we achieve it. And that's how you build an engaged workforce, build a culture that people want to be part of, and ultimately make the working experience fulfilling. So what kinds of companies have you worked with over the years?
Let me just speak to that for a second, and then I'll answer your question. Is that it's just over and over again, how we get a new client is from some company interfacing with a company that's practicing the collaborative way. And one company is fairly large, very, very successful construction company that integrated a heavy civil contractor, largest in the Mid-Atlantic, that is one of the most respected in the industry.
Hey there, Brad here, and this is not an ad. This is me saying thank you for connecting with this podcast. I would like to offer you a free gift. If you visit bradleyhook.com/gift, you'll find something very special there just for you. Now back to the episode.
Continuing to grow like crazy. I think there's approaching 3,000 employees there. They're doing approaching a couple billion, and leaders in the industry in safety. And they've been practicing the collaborative way since 1995. So that's like just almost 30 years.
Wow.
So that's a rare thing that, in this world of these kind of things, that other than safety and a few other things and quality, I don't know of too many things that are practiced for 30 years. And we've worked with all kinds of companies. So software companies, manufacturing distribution companies. We happen to have worked with a lot of contractors, engineering companies, construction companies, as well, insurance companies, even a few health services, doctor offices. So it's a pretty broad base of industries that we've worked with, and then a few foundations as well.
Mm, mm. And when a company engages, do they see it as a well-being experience? It's quite hard to imagine how it fits in. It requires the right kind of leader who has the foresight to say, does it come from a transformation budget or a well-being budget? Or in your experience, is it really just about a leader who decides this is the direction we're going in so that we're a better organization?
It's really in the direction of what you're saying, the last one. Say the owner of Alan Myers, the construction company I was talking about, when he, way back then, they were coming off their best year yet, but he recognized that to get where they wanted to go, they had to find a way to actually come together as a team and work their way get through the constraints of the silos. And he had not been able to get that to happen. And he saw that in the collaborative way, a pathway for doing that. And that is one of the things that often is the outcome. Because when we have a way of working, we can learn to work together. And when we meet those kind of breakdowns, we have a way to meet them, not ignore them, but care for them. That's what happened there. And so and at the same time, he had a vision that was emerging at that time for his company. That wasn't just his vision, but the leaders of the company, that they wanted to be the best in their industry. They wanted to have a great place to work, and they wanted to leave footprints in their industry. And that's what they've done, and that's what they're doing. I think that one of the things that the collaborative way is a part of, that is something bigger than the collaborative way, is that more and more we are learning that the way to win in business is through collaboration, through treating people with dignity and respect. And more the workforce is just unwilling to perform if there isn't an environment where they can contribute. And they might work there, but they have left, and you're still occupying the seat and you're paying for them, but they aren't going to bring their heart and spirit to something.
Yeah.
And they're not willing to put up with what we used to be when I was a young guy. So you got to find a way. And when you give them that opening, I had this wonderful chance to work with young leaders at Alan Myers. There were up and coming leaders in the company but the young ones. And so that was that for a number of years I got to do that. And to hear them tell the stories about, some of them had worked at Alan Myers and then left, and then they came back and they said,
"Hey, Brad here. Would you believe that around 70% of the people who watch this podcast have not yet subscribed? It would mean the world to us if you click that subscribe button on whichever platform you use, so that we can stay connected with you and you'll receive notifications when we add new episodes. We really appreciate you coming and connecting with us and being part of our community. So all the best."
You go to those other companies and they treat you like you have to be there for years before you can contribute. At Alan Myers, the first day in practically, well, that's a little exaggeration, but right away you have a chance to contribute. And people are listening for the value in what you have to say, instead of saying, you're too young, you haven't been here for a while, you don't know what you're talking about, you got to put in your time and then you can make a contribution. Well, that's not the world that we're living in today. And even those of us that are fewer and fewer of us at any age are willing to put up with this denigration. Some of us are willing to put up with, command and control at a point of, that. But you have to have a mighty exciting vision and a mighty exciting and everything else to be willing to put up with that kind of crap, and still get real what's possible from people. So that's the direction I feel the world is going, and especially in the workplace, that's the direction that the world's going. And the tolerance is, fortunately, intolerance for something else is growing. So
definitely, more and more young people I speak to are saying that their sense of purpose is completely interwoven with the company. And I suppose it's because the world has changed to some degree and people maybe do feel a little more aimless than maybe we used to. I'm not sure about that, but your identity is woven into the identity of the company. So people say, I work for this company and I feel proud about it. Or actually, this is a bus stop and I'm looking to jump on a bus and get out of here as quickly as possible. So it makes so much sense to create that culture that people love, so that you come to work and there are these principles. Yeah. Especially with Gen Z, from what I'm hearing.
And I mean, just about any level, truly. I mean, it's more there. Okay. But I've had a chance to interview people for like a leadership program that we've done and have them tell me about, we're really a successful company. And so there's a lot of headhunters that call me. But the thing is, I don't know any other company in our industry right now where you can work together the way we work together in this company. That's, to me, a major competitive advantage.
Yeah. Would you mind if we had a quick exploration of each of the 5 practices?
The first one is listening generously. So there, like I said before, we want to listen for the value, the gold in what the other person is saying. And so getting good at that is very challenging. So first off, you have to begin to take much more responsibility for the impact that your listening has. And very few people really do that just naturally. And it seems like, hey, I'm just listening however I'm listening. And if I want to make a difference, I'm usually going to make it or have an impact. That's with my mouth, and what I say or write, okay? We fail to appreciate that however we're listening at any time has an impact on the other person. And it has an impact on what we hear. And as we grow in our responsibility for how we're listening, and then begin to notice and catch our different kinds of filters or ways we're listening to each other, like even as simple as, oh, you're an accountant? Oh, boy. Okay, what do you got to say? Or you're the salesperson? Oh, God. But all those constrain what you can hear from the other person. Okay?
Yeah.
And So as we start to own those and start setting those aside and being real curiosity, so that we're listening with real curiosity and with this intent to learn, backed up by a willingness to be influenced, that's where it really gets rich. And, to do that, got to learn how to pay attention and a number of other things to get good at it. Any movement forward is very positive. So then we have speaking straight. So to speak honestly in a way that contributes, that forwards what we're up to. One of the important parts of that is learning to speak up, okay? Because so much of the times we're not speaking straight is expressed by not speaking up. So we see something that doesn't look so good and we don't say, looks like we're about to go over the edge here. But, they must know, or whatever. And so we don't speak up. So it's learning to speak up. And but it's also then learning to speak up in a way that contributes. So it's not a license, speaking straight isn't a license to demean people, attack people, just say whatever is on your mind. It's how do I say what I have to say in a way that can be a contribution and take responsibility for the impact when it doesn't work out so good. And then get curious, you got to listen generously if you're going to speak straight effectively. And so you do those together.
How important is asking questions? Because so many people are afraid they're going to look dumb or say something stupid. But if the culture is right, you are able to ask those questions and just fact check. Like, are we all on the same page? That's a big part of speaking straight, isn't it?
And listening generously. That's critical because, hey, I don't know what you heard. I know what I said, but I don't know what you heard. Okay. So, and maybe I don't even know what I said actually sometimes, but I assume that you heard what I meant to say. And then I deal with you as though you did, except, many, many times you didn't. So to check to see if we have mutual understanding is just essential to both practices. And curiosity, where you express your curiosity is with a lot of questions. So, and it seems like you're saying this, or is that what you're saying? Or it feels like your intent here is to accomplish this. Is that right? Things like that. So you have to explore, because there's no way you can know. I mean, if you can think you know exactly what the other person's up to because you got history and this and that. But that's a big assumption. And we tend to operate as though our assumptions are the truth, but it's much better to explore over there and let's get to what is really the case. Like you said, those are just essential to being in a collaborative environment. There's lots of questions and checking for understanding, not assuming that you're understood. So,
and the third practice you're about to get into,
being for each other. So that's at first glance, many people think that's all soft and cuddly, but the truth is that's really a tough practice. That's hard to do. It takes a lot you got to be so honest with yourself, and it takes confronting difficult conversations. Say if you stepped on somebody's toes or they're upset about something you did, to bring the courage to listen generously and speak straight and work through that till you can get to some kind of a mutual understanding so you can work together. To speak up and support somebody if they're stumbling, rather than just watch them stumble and judge them. And it's the same way with the practice of collaborative way. None of us are going to ever master it. So part of being for each other is supporting each other in the practice rather than judging each other in the practice. Yeah, that's easy to do. We're all going to fall short. So, but what kind of contribution is that? So often we think if we're just being judgmental enough, we're really helping out.
That's not the way.
No, that doesn't really the case. How do I support that other person's success? So that's challenging. And how do I intervene in gossip, learning to do that when it happens? Because gossip just destroys trust in an organization. And with gossip, I can so constrain another person's ability to contribute. It's it just so undermines any working environment. So both to get good at that and good at intervening when it emerges. So you just don't let it sit there. You take a leadership role. So being for is really challenging. And then honoring commitments. So many times that's just doing what you said you were going to do, but it's bigger than that, because it's one, if I commit to get something done by a certain time, then I'm saying I either have or can get the means to do that, and I recognize that if for any reason along the way, and I'm saying it's going to happen, okay, and if any time along the pathway something happens such that, and life is full of these, that I can't or I don't see how I can, I'm going to speak to the person who I made that commitment to right away. And so those are some of the elements of what it is. And when you start really honoring commitments in that way, and sometimes you'll remember that these commitments are tools to support us in accomplishing what we're up to, okay? So I make a commitment, but then I start to recognize, whoa, this isn't really getting us across the goal line. This commitment is not actually useful. If I get blinded by my commitment and just keep it because I'm supposed to, that doesn't serve anything. So then I need to call that out, and then we have to have use our other skills. So that gives you a little flavor. There's a lot more to go down in there, but and then acknowledgement and appreciation. So as we were saying earlier, it starts with appreciation. And you can express that. It's waking up to the fact that this person is in being for as well. This person is more than a means to an end. They're more than just your means to getting this job done or getting what you need done. They're actually a real human being. Okay. And they're not just and no one's just an individual. They got a whole network of relationships that they're a part of that you're interacting with in this moment. It's a real person there. And so by being for them and by acknowledging them, so they can actually, so I just don't say good job. I look, what was a good job about it? What did they have to go through to do that? What does it mean to me that they did what they did? And to bring some depth by sharing those things to the other person, man, it's just like, whew. The other side of it is also of acknowledgement, appreciation, is getting good at receiving it. So many of us, I was a major deflector back then when we started the practice. Or a little before it, I would, I'm just doing my job. I'm just doing my job. Yeah. And to actually let it in is an important part of the practice, because if you don't let it in, this person extended themselves, you deflected, that they put themselves at risk to acknowledge you. You've just diminished the likelihood they're going to continue to do that. You're undermining the whole practice when you don't open yourself up and allow yourself to be touched when somebody acknowledges you. And just most of the time, all you need to do is say thank you. There's some other things you could say, but that's where you got to start.
So interesting, that tendency to deflect. I've done that many times in my life as well, and I never thought of it. But when someone gives you a compliment or says, what you did was valuable, and you deflect it, it's almost like giving back a gift that they've just given you. They say, here's this little gift that I prepared for you. And it makes you vulnerable because you're hoping that they like it. And you say, oh, it's okay, thanks. That's basically what you're doing.
It's rejection.
It's rejection.
Reject their acknowledgement, and that doesn't feel good.
Can a company hire for collaborative skills, or is this methodology such that you can actually hire the best of the best talent and you've got a framework to work well together? Or should you still, as a HR leader, think about people who have the capacity or demonstrate that they can speak straight and that they can listen generously?
Well, I think it would be, depending upon your company, if you have a culture that is supportive of those things, then I would be hiring as best I could towards that. Okay.
Yeah.
Now, when we work with a company, we almost always start at the top of the company, and we're there not just to train skills. That's not very exciting. We're there to help the company take on this way of working and adopt this way of working, so that the leaders lead the practice themselves and are in the practice. So then we support the leaders in then spreading the practice through the company. So that's how we work. We don't just come and while we use workshops as a tool, it's not your typical training session. It's a lot deeper than that. And at some point, the company takes that over and begins to do most of the training themselves.
It sounds like the collaborative way would be an ideal framework for a family or for a couple in a relationship. It's universal, really, the principles. Have you found people adopt it in their personal lives?
Well, me. So I do that. And, my wife and I we were married. My wife died of ovarian cancer, but we were married for we were together 40 years and almost married for 39 years. We practiced the collaborative way together. And boy, during those we had an extraordinary, wonderful, beautiful relationship together, hard-earned and through our practice, and prepared us when we met some of the toughest conditions in life, so that we were able to stay in our love and support for each other all the way to the very end, and actually enjoy life and grow in our love for each other through those challenging times.
You can do it.
And that's just me. You hear that over and over again, and you hear spouses coming back saying, "Wow, what is the collaborative way? This is great. My spouse is now they're listening to me. Geez, they haven't listened to me in for forever." And our little miracles happen with their kids, things like that, because we don't realize how much we're not listening and what an impact it has. And then you bring some of the others, and there are other families that are practicing, and the kids start to support Dad, I don't think you're really listening to what Johnny's saying here. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, you're right on.
And for anyone who's interested, the link to the book will be in the show notes. So do click it and check it out, because I'm a huge advocate. I've worked with Lloyd on many projects, and a strong believer in the methodology. Perhaps you could tell us a little bit about Zen and your interests in that kind of world.
Well, I'm always looking to grow and to elevate my ability to practice. Like, for example, at a very, very, very basic level, to listen generously, what's required is you got to catch yourself when you're not. If you can notice when you're not, then you can true up and bring that curiosity forward. Okay? Well, let me say it a couple different ways. First, one, in doing that, it builds your ability to do it. Okay? And it builds your ability to be centered and less reactive in life. As you get good at the practice, it really supports you being much more generative and collaborative in how you relate to people, and a lot less acting out of just the first reaction that gets kicked up in you. So you can catch it and recenter yourself and then begin your practice. Okay. And so anything that can support me in that, I'm interested in. And that's how I got interested in Zen. I was wanting to just deepen myself a little more and deepen my center and my ability to recognize my automatic patterns. And so I found that concentration meditation inside of Zen has been very useful and very powerful in my elevating my ability to do that.
What is a concentration meditation? Is it a formal practice?
Just about every kind of meditation is wonderful. Okay. And and a lot of meditations about relaxing. Some is about getting into different states and feeling really good. But the Zen concentration meditation is more towards like what you're going to do if you want to be less reactive. So because you're sitting there, okay, and in a good posture, decent posture, and you're at the very basic level, you're just following your breath, okay? And then what's going to happen is you're going to get distracted. You're going to start in, and this is not off, like many people say, I can't meditate because I get distracted. No, that's where the fun begins.
That's it.
Because the question is, how soon can you notice you're distracted? And then can you kindly let go and gently let go of that distraction and come back to what you're up to, which come back to center, come back to following your breath. So it's a way to work out in the gym. That's one way of looking at it. Like you go into a controlled environment to build up different kind of muscles, okay? And you do some controlled and then less controlled exercise. So this is a way to build your capacity to be able to recognize when you are starting to get reactive or when you're starting to get into a habitual pattern, because that thought is a habitual pattern, and being able to get stronger at recognizing it, having the room to recognize it, having the space to do that, and then choose to come back to what you're up to. Choose to come back to your core values. Choose to come back to your practice of the collaborative way, and then engage from there. So that is, for me, what concentration meditation is about. And yes, you'll get other wonderful little goodies. Like have times of just all of just being in stillness. But that's like, okay, great. That's wonderful. Okay. But I want to get really good at being able to be present to my reactivity, not get reactive about my reactivity, but instead embrace it, be kind, and recenter, and come back so I can meet whatever's happening, so I can show up for the moment and deal with what's in front of me. That's what I'm interested in.
It reminds me of the quote by Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space, and in that space lies our freedom. And it sounds like through meditation, you can cultivate awareness and create that space in the moments that matter in your life.
Yes, that's what I'm up to. That's also what happens for people in the practice of the collaborative way, even with or without meditation. Because you're doing that very practice, you're starting to take responsibility for how you respond in the world and giving the tools to be able to do that successfully so that you don't have to be so reactive. Because until you've got something else to practice, then you tend to do whatever you always get an automatic, immediate way to respond to everything, and often we make the mistake of identifying ourselves as that. But that's just your history. That's just habit. And, you do have what Viktor Frankl is talking about available, that space to choose. You have to earn that space, develop that space. And it takes practice, learning, practice, learning, practice forevermore. That's my view.
Who or what inspires you, Lloyd?
I get inspired by the people around me. I just love seeing people step up and meet the moment in whatever way. I get inspired by people expressing their love. I get inspired by people expressing their commitment, stepping outside of, having the courage to step outside of what it is that's just given to them by the automatic. That's what inspires me.
Amazing. Well, I'd like to say that you inspire me, so thank you, Lloyd.
Yourself, my friend. So,
any final thoughts for those who stuck with us all the way to the end?
Well, just congratulations on your new book.
Thank you.
I have read it and I really enjoy it, and I think in many ways you're talking about many things that are in the collaborative way, just from a different angle. And I love the thing about where the way you help people recognize that your actions are very much connected to your values, and you give them a pathway to begin to be responsible and own their values, and then recognize that, whoa, some of the things that I've been valuing, it's unconscious. It's not really what I value. And so as you support them in getting closer and closer in identifying what their core values are, so they can keep coming back to here, those values, just like what we've been talking about. That's the same thing. And then the way you help them put it into action, it's like is so important. It's part of the thing that what the collaborative way does for companies. They have values, but so often those values don't come into action. And the collaborative way, just in the practice, is either an expression of those values, or it's the pathway for fulfilling those values. And then the values come off the walls into action, and that's what you're supporting people in your book, which is trued up by, if you're not experiencing fulfillment, you're not quite on the right path.
That's exactly right.
I think that's just a beautiful guidance that you have provided for people with this book, and I just encourage people to get a hold of it as soon as it's available and read it. It's not a long read. I got it done in a couple of days in spots, and it was really thought-provoking, engaging, and it's also you share some beautiful things about your life that gives that were just so much fun to be a part of. So it's well done.
Thank you. I appreciate it very much, very much. If anyone is interested, I'll put a link to the book in the show notes as well. Yeah. Lloyd, thank you so much. Any final thoughts for our listeners before we sign off?
I'd just encourage you've got a little more understanding about each of these practices. We always start with listening generously. So I'd encourage you to see if you could actually practice. Catch yourself not really listening for the value in what the other person is saying. See if you can catch yourself and look for that value and listen for it. So I'd encourage you to do that. You'll be surprised at what literally miracles can happen from doing that.
Thank you so much again. It's always a pleasure to catch up. And thank you everyone for tuning into another episode. We'll see you next time. Lloyd, thank you.
Thank you, Brad. A real pleasure to be with you. Thank you.